Hi, welcome to Home Farm. Today we're going to be reviewing the Stelrad Compact K3 radiators that we've just had installed in our Victorian farmhouse.
So for those of you that have been watching our Airsource Journey videos that we've been doing, our last video was episode 9 and we talked about how we just had some pretty major changes done to our air source heating and central heating system. And part of those changes, we had some new radiators installed and they're the Stelrad K3s. And we're going to talk about basically that in more detail. If you want to check out our Airsource episode 9 video, we'll link it up below, where that talks about the whole, everything that happened.
What we installed and what we did.
Yeah.
And in this video now, we've had the radiators running for about 3 weeks.
Yeah.
And we've had a lot of cool nights, and it allows us to now put together a review of the actual performance of these new K3 radiators.
For those of you that haven't watched or don't watch our Airsource Journey videos, just to kind of fill you in, Mars is really heavily into the tech and into our air source central heating system and knows kind of all the technicalities and the numbers and how things work and the efficiency. I am really not involved at all. I try and avoid getting involved. So with regards to the radiators and anything really that's being installed into the property, we just discussed with me, I'm just involved with the aesthetics side of things and whether something looks nice and whether it's going to kind of work with our interiors and that kind of thing. So it's not really, that's not really my domain. So when it came to the Stelrads, you came to me and that was really the only input I had was, you know, are these the ones that we want? We're going to be replacing the current radiators for these ones that are bigger. This is what they look like. And Stelrad have a huge catalogue. It was incredible and really impressive. Massive catalogue of different styles. I mean, everything from, you know, really slick modern to, you know, kind of more traditional. So a really fantastic array. We just wanted to replace like for like because we weren't changing all of the radiators. When I say like for like, I mean visually. So we didn't really want to put something in that looked completely different in some rooms to what was in other rooms. I thought that that would look a bit strange. So I wanted to kind of just keep the general kind of modern look of what we had already that had been put in a few years ago by the previous owners. And just kind of find something that looked like it was in the same kind of remit of that, so that you walked through the house and there was a bit more consistency on aesthetics. And these were a lot bigger, as in chunkier. So the Stelrad K3s are a 3-layer basically. So what we had in some of the rooms was a double layer and a single.
We had K2s and single panel radiators, which we'll get to in a minute.
The K3s are obviously a lot thicker and a lot chunkier, a lot deeper. So we had to measure up and make sure that we had the space for that. But they also came in a huge amount of varieties of sizes from, you know, lengths, widths, heights, all sorts of different things.
All of your standard sizes, and we basically just upgraded ours size for size. So we didn't have to amend any of the pipework coming out of the walls. So basically, if we had a 1 meter radiator in a room, we kept that, but we just made it a K3. All in all, we replaced 5 radiators, but I'm only going to speak about 2 rooms in particular in terms of the big performance improvements that we've seen. For us, it was the TV room and the room that we're sitting in at the moment.
We call it the conservatory, but it's not, because it is actually a proper roof with skylights and then wooden panels and then a brickwork underneath, so it is an extension, kind of a garden room. So this did get really cold before.
It's a pretty big room. It's about 30 square meters, and the previous owners had put in 2 single panel radiators, which were tiny. So this room, even with the air source heat pump running full blasts, we just never were able to pick the temperatures up in this room at all during the winter. And even at this time of year, when the evenings are still getting down to 1 or 2 degrees, we were hitting temperatures of about 11 degrees, 10 degrees overnight. So you'd come in here first thing in the morning and it was really icy. So by putting in the K3s, replacing the single panels, the most interesting thing is that we have a target temperature in this room of 18 degrees. And remarkably, just by replacing the radiators, we are now able to maintain that 18 degrees throughout.
For me, I mean, I know you want to fill in the middle bit, but to jump to the end of the results, for me, that's been the biggest game changer for me, is that I now have been able to reclaim, a big portion of our downstairs area to live, to come in and work and do things and enjoy the space, which we haven't been able to do up until this point. So that's been brilliant for me.
And even first thing in the morning, it was impossible to come in here. It was just too icy. We just kept the doors closed because all that cold air would actually make its way into the house itself.
Yeah.
Now we're getting to a point where we're coming down in the mornings and it is 18 degrees, 19 degrees. So we haven't factored in the fact that it is getting up to 30 degrees during the day. So I've actually looked at the temperatures kind of from midnight to maybe 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock in the morning. And that's where basically I've looked at the target temperatures. We're doing that using our Eve Thermo smart TRVs. They're really incredible because they keep so much data on them. Mm. So we've got data for the last 2 years since we've actually installed these TRVs. And when you actually pull it, you can actually see how the fluctuations would kind of go like this over the course of a 24-hour period. Yeah. Now we have big spikes where it gets really hot during the day, but it completely plateaus out in the evening and it actually maintains that 18-degree line. So we no longer have these kind of spike patterns. Wow. It now kind of goes up and then it comes down gently and then it plateaus out. So that is just nothing more than the Stelrad radiators actually now utilizing the heat that our Airsource heat pump is generating and actually introducing and actually emitting it into this room.
And then we've got the other extreme, which is our TV room, which is at the north end of the house and barely has any windows. Yeah. So it doesn't get any sunlight to warm it up. And it's really it's in a corner of the building. So there's other rooms around it. Yeah. So it's kind of tucked in. So it's really dark. And it takes ages to heat up, but we were just really struggling with that, weren't we?
And that was actually the room that prompted us to get all this work done. So over the course of this past winter in February, when we hit the -6 temperatures, that room is set to heat to 23 degrees because it's the TV room. So we want it to be nice and snug when we go and watch TV in the evenings. Yeah. During the course of that really cold spell that we had for 2 weeks, we never got it above 15 degrees. Because that K2 radiator in there was just undersized and it just wasn't heating that room up. Yeah. Now that we put the K3 in, I mean, we pretty much sensed from the first day that it went, we walked into the TV room that first night and you could feel the heat around you automatically. Yeah. It was just remarkable how quick that change was. And when we now look at the data, just like we did in this garden room, we are now, the target temperature in there is 23 degrees in the evening and 21 degrees for the rest of the day. And again, we have now completely plateaued. So basically it does a small spike up to 23 degrees and then drops down to about 20 or 21. And it just maintains that through the night. And then about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, it goes back up to 23. It's just remarkable how consistently it's been heating that room.
So there has been a dramatic difference in the performance of the Stelrad radiators to radiators we've had before. Mm-hmm. And I think that speaks to just their design and how they've actually, the technology and the design they put into the radiators.
And the fact that it's a K3 means that it's got 50% more metal surface area inside the actual radiator. And what that basically translates to is that in the past, with our low flow heating system that we've got, when we went up to the radiators and touched them, they were warm. But when you put your hand above the actual radiator, you couldn't really feel any heat coming out. No. This is the complete opposite. You still touch the radiator. It still probably feels as warm as the old radiators did. But the amount of heat that actually comes out through the top and through convection works its way through the room. It's a complete game changer. I mean, these radiators have completely transformed rooms that we really struggled to get to temperature, and now they are maintaining quite comfortably.
Yeah, when I walked into the TV room for the first time, that first night had been installed, it was the first time that I could actually feel a subtle waft of warm air, and you could actually feel the convection
feel
working
around your face. You can feel it everywhere.
I could actually feel the heat, rather than the heat coming kind of at you when you walk past a radiator and it just kind of warms your thigh or your calf or whatever. This, I actually could feel it on my face. It was actually coming off the ceiling and kind of floating down. It was obviously very gentle, but you could, it was noticeable. It was the first time I walked into that room and I could actually feel a warm air coming towards me. And I said to you straight away, I said, oh my goodness, this is amazing. Like, I can actually feel the warmth coming at me. And I was right at the other end of the room where the door is, and the radiator's on the opposite wall. So it was quite impressive.
It's noticeable.
Yeah.
And Leopold, our cat, absolutely adores the new radiators.
Yeah.
Whenever we watch TV, he often sleeps on the radiator, and he used to do that on the K2s also. Now the K3, because it's wider, he can now stretch out. It's super comfortable. And he actually goes into like a semi-heat coma because he's just so warm and toasty. He just lies there and just really takes them in. So, he's benefited from the radiators just as much as we have.
Yeah, he thinks we keep saying he's going to the sauna for the evening. But yeah, they're nice, they're slick. The ones that we have chosen are very simple design.
They're a classic design.
Yeah, very simple, modern classic. I mean, you could, if you want to put a radiator cover over it, wooden one to make it more decorative, you could. So I wanted something quite simple from that perspective.
And one of the other hugely notable things is that when we've taken off radiators off the walls in the past, the K2s, I can quite comfortably lift one of those and carry it around.
Yeah.
These K3s are extremely heavy. So, it did take the two of us to actually bring them into the house. And when they got installed and fitted, there were two guys that had to do that too. Yeah. So that is a consideration because they are quite heavy. We were able to mount ours to stud wall. So we actually didn't go into brick anywhere. It was the guys that actually installed them tried as best they could to actually find the studs, to actually drive the brackets into those. But it is a consideration that they are heavy, so, factor that in.
Yeah, I think that generally speaking, I don't want to repeat too much. If you've watched the episode 9 Airsource, then, I'm sorry if I'm going to kind of repeat myself from things I said then. But I think that it's worth saying, if for those of you who haven't watched that video, that from my perspective, we've only purchased a couple of radiators in the past for another property. And we just kind of went onto eBay, or we went into like a plumbing website, and we just kind of, sorted by kind of low to high price, and kind of, maybe went like in the middle somewhere.
Yeah, went down the middle.
Middle to low, kind of. We didn't want to spend too much money on a radiator. I didn't really see the point. I just kind of thought, well, radiators are radiators. They're just going to do the same thing. I think that I've actually realised that radiators are not all the same.
No, they're not.
And I really do have a completely different outlook on radiators now. I think that I just presume that they were all metal. They all kind of, the water goes in, it's heating up, that's it. It chucks out, a certain amount of heat, and that's it, how much kind of design can go into it. And now we've had these Stelrad K3s, and it's been a real eye-opener for me, because now I'm thinking, wow, the efficiency and how much heat comes off a radiator really is down to how it's manufactured and built. And there is a massive difference between your kind of cheapo entry-level radiator to something that, a Stelrad, which is a higher price point. But my goodness, the result and the efficiency and the impact that it's had on our lives and the way that we use our home has been massive, and so worth every penny.
Definitely.
I think that it's really been, for me, it's really shifted my whole way of thinking about a radiator. I mean, before, when we have chosen radiators in the past, I've literally measured, what size do we need? What color do I want? What style, roughly? Modern, simple, Victorian, what do you want? And then just kind of gone for, cheap to kind of mid-level price point. And that's just not how I would choose a radiator now.
I think to some degree you can get away going down that route that we used to when you've got an oil or gas boiler, because your flow temperatures are just so much higher that, if you have got for lack of a better term, a cheaper radiator, because that water is flowing and it's just so much hotter, I think it's more forgiving. But in our case, because we have got an air source heat pump and it's a low flow temperature system, those radiators, you do need something that is able to emit that extra heat.
Yeah.
And these K3s accomplish that quite comfortably. I think the biggest takeaway from this is that if you have got a house that, even if it's gas, oil, or an Airsource heat pump, or any heat pump for that matter, and you've got 1 or 2 rooms that are struggling to get to temperature, and you think that your system is operating okay, it could be things like pipework and things that are actually preventing decent amounts of flow getting to those radiators, which I think is to some degree the problem that we had. So if you are experiencing that, I do think that getting something like a Stelrad K3 compact radiator would go a long way to actually improving the heat output in those particular rooms.
So I think overall, it goes without saying we would recommend.
Oh, definitely.
Definitely recommend.
Without hesitation.
A Stelrad. I mean, the K3s, we can't speak for any of the other Stelrad radiators because we don't have them. But I have to say that given how impressed that we've been by the Stelrad K3s, if I needed to purchase another radiator for, maybe a towel rail for a bathroom, or maybe if one of the other radiators conks out, definitely Stelrad are going to be the first company that I look at. Just because the catalogue is so huge. They've got such a really, impressive range, lots of choices. And I think that, from what we've seen, the radiators, we did 5 radiators. All 5 turned up, packaged nicely. Every single one of them has performed, in the same way.
Definitely.
So there's been consistency. They've obviously got good quality control. So for me personally, I've been really impressed, generally speaking, with Stelrad, and I'd be very comfortable recommending them to friends and family.
Definitely. So I hope that you have found this video useful and interesting. If you did, as always, give us a thumbs up, hit the subscribe button below, and we'll see you in our next video.
Thanks for watching.